Hey guys, thanks for watching Mad for Swoo. Today I'm going over a Chirrut red deck I'm calling Yin Yang Chirrut. The reason I'm calling it that is it's a perfect balance of aggression red with equal counterpart cards to each other of vigilance blue. So as you're playing, if you're new or experienced in any situation, if you're playing an aggressive opponent or a control type opponent or even mid-range, it makes the decision making easier. You more or less can pick the red aggro cards against control, or vice versa, the blue control restore type cards against aggro. This is a deck I've played a lot since the game really started. It kind of evolved from a Luke sort of build into a pretty popular Chirrut red deck in set 1. I haven't heard a lot of talk about it in set 2. Everyone's kind of trying new things, and yellow boba's become really popular. So I thought this deck would be a good one to put out there now in response to a lot of what I'm seeing. So we'll get into it. This video goes along with an article I wrote. I'm going to do a little bit of written content as well. I actually prefer having something in front of me rather than pausing videos all the time when I'm trying to learn new decks. So I think I'll do both, and you can like, subscribe, and comment on this, or if you would like to do the written version, I'll have that in the description as well. So Chirrut red uses a 30-point base. I've tried Tarkin Town. I've seen people use Tarkin Town with Chirrut. Me personally, I like that 5 extra health, especially as you'll see as we go on. We're trying to get to Luke's, redemptions, etc. And that extra 5 health can go a long way. Chirrut himself is something I've kind of come back into since trying Red Ray. I found her to be too slow. I didn't like the lack of synergy with Fleet Lieutenant, as you'll see later on in this video. And so I moved back over to Chirrut, and I think with the addition of Sentinels in space and in ground, as well as a few other new cards, including some earlier discard, and moving away from the old Force Surrenders at a cost of 6 into an earlier game, Hand Destruction, I think he could be even more efficient. You know, as soon as Rivals Fall came out, people thought, oh, that's the end of Chirrut. That's obviously not been the case, but that could be said for any leader at any point. It could be removed. If someone wants to spend their whole turn, that's great. We'll boost up other people and use our other synergies. And so let's get into it. The turn 1 play, there's 3 options. We'll go A-Wing, Sabine, or Restored Arc. A-Wing comes out obviously for more aggro. Sabine is my number 1 pick in a sort of undecided game, all things equal. And then Restored Arc is nice for a space body, that the restore is not that big of a deal to start, but it's starting that control sort of snowballing effect against aggro. All 3 of these cards go well with Fleet Lieutenant. Let's move into second turn units. Pretty standard, you've seen these guys before. Yoda and Fleet Lieutenant. Fleet Lieutenant's synergy to me is still extremely relevant. Pairs immediately with our first turn units if they haven't been defeated. And it gets you that initiative almost for sure because you're using both your cards with 1 action. Yoda is fabulous because he's an early Force user who will pair with Force Throw, as we'll see later on, and restoring 2, drawing you a card. Not much more you can ask from a turn 2 unit. So it's another case of yin and yang. Do you want aggro or do you want control? Every game's different. It's nice to have both. You'll see in the deck list that's posted of exactly how many copies of each I run, but feel free to play around with it and do what you can. Different from set 1 Chirrut is set 2 Chirrut's Sentinels. We have 1 in space, we have 1 on ground. A few copies of each. Sideboard will be talked about at the end, and it's posted in the article as well, but you'll want to pump up to 3 copies of either or both of these depending on the more aggro matchups you're playing. But where Chirrut in set 1 struggled against someone like Sabine to really slow her down quick enough, now you're putting a shielded Sentinel out on the second turn of the game. and just plugging up that lane, be it space or ground, to really slow her down and get to your big bodies much easier. In the same vein, we have our still a removal. So I have takedown and pillage. You'll notice pillage is kind of an opposite strategy to takedown, where takedown you're obviously taking down a unit with 5 or less health. Pillage, now you're discarding 2 cards from their hand, extremely valuable. Before you'd have to wait till forced surrender. Now you can do it so much sooner. Discard routes against control are fabulous for just quickly destroying their hand to make them top deck the rest of the game. And now suddenly they're not just removing your units every single time you play them because they have no cards in their hand. So that's a card against control that you're going to want to put in 3 pillage. And takedown obviously is still very effective in terms of cheap removal. We have some 3-cost kind of versions that kind of are yin and yang to each other, in the sense that we have open fire to remove a unit, and then we have disabling Fang Fighter to remove an upgrade. So Fang Fighter, we run a few copies of. You're deleting bounties. You're deleting your opponent's upgrades in, let's say, a Mandalorian deck. You're really destroying what they're trying to do. Open fire was always the classic, early Chirrut removal play. Now it's just an option. It's not something you necessarily have to do. It's there. There's a lot of removal in this deck and a lot of options. It's extremely diverse. I think it's one of the best mid-range decks there is now, and it's kind of being slept on, in my opinion. For turn 3, we have a yin and yang to each other. We have Kanan to restore, and then the Yang version of that is the aggressive K2SO, some cheap overwhelm, and also when defeated, you're discarding another card from their hand or doing 3 to base. Either way can suit you depending on the matchup. And you're kind of getting the theme here of the choices you can make are a lot simpler when you frame it under the sort of theme of yin and yang. Here we have a force throw, and we have the forces with me. Forces with me, I've always ran 3 of this card. Fabulous with any force user, especially Chirrut. You're shielding, you're immediately attacking for +2. And it's just, they think they've removed him, and suddenly you throw that on him, and he's still living until the next turn. Or like we mentioned earlier, Rivals Fall, if they play that, well, you play this on a different force user, and suddenly you're saving a force user, doing extra damage, and also saving them for this card, Force Throw, where now you can discard another card from their hand. Keep in mind, if they have a lot of cards in their hand, it's going to be probably 1 or 2, maybe 3 damage to their unit. So if you need to do a lot of damage, you Force Throw yourself. You need a force user out in play to do this, but then you're throwing a Luke, you're throwing a Redemption, and you're removing maybe their leader, Boba, gone. And so that can be extremely effective. These are sort of yin and yang to each other. Pick the path that works based on the scenario. Side deck in, others as required. We have a Heroic Resolve now, and we have a Jedi Lightsaber. Historically, it was Jedi Lightsabers and Chirruts, and then you would have the odd Luke lightsaber if necessary. We've done away with the Lukes. I've gone down to 2 Jedi Lightsabers. It's no big deal having 3. I like having 2 of each of these. The mirroring effect of each other that were pretty common theme in this. Jedi Lightsaber is nice as a nice defensive weapon. You're boosting your Chirrut or any other Force user, doing -2/-2 on attack, and the +3/+3 is excellent. For a cheaper option, you're using Heroic Resolve. It's just a +1/+1, but then you can pay 2 at any point in the game that you so choose to do an extra 4 Overwhelm, which is massive. I like, especially using this when Chirrut has 5 damage on him. Your opponent thinks they've beaten him, throw a Heroic Resolve on him for 1, he's suddenly a 6, and he's going into next turns. He's going to survive that turn unless they're going to spend their whole turn to take down a rival's fall, and that's fine. And then you're doing at least, 7, 8 damage with Chirrut, and knowing he's going to die at the end of the turn, but you just got an extra 8 damage for a couple of resources. So you have these sort of cards counterbalancing each other. Side deck in 3 if necessary. New this round 2 of Chirrut. Different from set 1, we now have Smuggle. We have a sort of Yin tech card. It's more of a defensive card. It's not so much for attacking, but what you're doing with tech is you're giving all your other cards Smuggle. This is for games that are going to go long, trying to control you. We're talking about Palpatines. They're getting into turns 7, 8, 9, 10. Something you can smuggle out any card in your smuggle row. And in this deck, as you've seen, the diversity of options, you'll have something that is extremely beneficial. Or for just pure aggro, you have the Rebel Cassian coming out. He comes out ready when you smuggle him. Does 3 damage. If you don't boost him up, you can Fleet Lieutenant him because he's a rebel. Lot of options here for just a quick sort of damage. But you're seeing the Yin and Yang theme here again is in a game, you're probably only using one of these guys, and is it a long game where I'm facing control, or do I need to go quick aggro? Depends who you're playing against. 2 great options in set 2 Chirrut that I think just add another diverse sort of option. And then we get into the end game cards. We have 3 of them. We have a Rival's Fall. Cost 6, you're moving a unit. This is for times when someone's got to like 10-10 or something like that with upgrades, Mandalorians, etc. Rival's Fall, gone. Luke Skywalker, I run 3 of them because I have 3 of them. You may not. You may have noticed with our set 1 plays, we had about 7 options for turn 1. If you only have 2 Lukes out, that's fine. Replace his spot with another turn 1 card. No harm there. You're at least guaranteeing you have a turn 1 card. Yeah, regardless of if you have to mulligan or not. Luke's a fabulous card. Another Force user. Then we get into Redemption. It's the nicest option for Redemption, I find, is he works for an 8 damage with Force Throw. Hold them in your hand. Hold a Luke. Hold the Redemption. Then a Rival's Fall. And if you have to Force Throw and discard yourself, get rid of one of them. You just deleted one of their 7-8 cost units out of nowhere for 1. Also, Redemption, as you know, heals a base or unit by 8. So maybe you're healing a Luke. Maybe you're healing a Chirrut. Maybe you're healing your base to get to that next round of the game where they thought they were going to defeat you. But now you have all the damage you need to do. Now being able to use the smuggle that we saw earlier, that extra round of the game with Chirrut will often go in your favor. That's what we have so far for Chirrut. I'll link the article with the sideboard cards. I'm curious what you guys would sideboard. Let me know in the comments. I like to do maybe a 3rd copy of each, depending on the matchup, right? Do I need aggro? I'll put in another Fleet Lieutenant. I'll put in another A-Wing. Do I need control?